Do you want to master lens blur in Lightroom Classic? Well, keep watching and you will. Hi folks, I'm Sean McCormick from Lightroom Blog. I'm also the author of Essential Development 3, which is probably on sale right now if you go and look for it, where I cover a lot more detail on 25 or more items inside of Lightroom's Develop module. But let's not talk about that now. Let us go on and look at lens blur. So it's an early access feature that we have in Lightroom Classic 13, which means that it's not finished. But it is really, really good for not being finished. So let's just straight away dive in. I've picked this picture because there's various different areas in it. There isn't huge foreground, but we'll see what it does anyway. So let's click apply. We see the analyzing. It analyzes, and it's decided that this road is our area of focus. And that's fine. The great thing about the lens blur is when you're looking from up higher, like in a drone shot, you can create that miniaturization effect. I had earlier versions of this where I had a mask on the mountains, and the mask makes a mess of what's going on here. So it does definitely play with masks, not necessarily well sometimes. All right, so normally when you see it first, it looks a bit more like that. So we're going to open up for bokeh. We'll talk through these now. This is the default bokeh, which is the circle. But you also have bubble, which is an overcorrected version of it. You can see what is happening with the lines here as it overcorrects. It's really exaggerated there. You got the 5-blade, which is like a vintage lens basically, and I really like the bokeh from this one myself as an effect. There's also the ring, which is meant to give you the effect that you would get from mirror lenses. I'll show you another image where it's a little bit more pronounced. You can see the rings better. And then you got the cat eye, the cat look. So that's the kind of final look. Let's jump back here just to show that there are differences between the different kinds of bokeh. So you can decide how much blur you want to apply. So you could have less blur overall, so that's only being subtle, or you can have it as being a lot of blur if you really, really want. Okay, so let's not make this as effectively as strong. So we put it around 25 here. And now what we can do as well is we can click a boost, which it depends on like what's in the image. Like if there's a lot of highlights, it can work more on highlights, but yeah, it's not doing a whole lot in this particular image. So just drop that back a little bit. Now, with your focal range, that is basically deciding what area is in focus, okay? And what we see here, we've got yellow areas, that means it's closer, and their pink is in the middle, and as it goes more purple, it's in the background. And then if there was what it deems to be like full background here, it would actually say that this is black. Now, we're not seeing black in this particular image, but you will in other images. Now, by moving this, if we watch the image, we can see that our focus point is moving towards the back, and the area in the front is becoming more blurred. Okay, if we drag in the handles as well, we can make this to be a really, really tight area of focus, much tighter. So we can just literally follow the road as we go along here. And it will go back along the road and into the mountains as we get further back. Okay, so we do have an option of that. Now to actually see the area that's in focus and to see what's going on full stop, we can just click on this visualize depth. Okay, so what visualize depth does is it shows where it thinks the various different depths in the images are. Okay, you can see here this is closer and further away, which is what we'd expect. It's not really working very hard here, but we can see here that it is defining these edges here as being closer than this edge here, even though in actual fact there's only a couple of feet in the difference there. But it does detect there's a little bit of drop off there. Now, what happens when we go and start dragging? Well, what happens is our focus area is the area in white. Okay. So as we move along, the area that's in white then is what is in focus and is based on what it's determined as being the depth inside the actual image itself. So we could come up here and we could say, well, I want this area with the trees here to be in focus. But then all of a sudden, well, that's everything in focus. So if I pull this back a small bit, it might pull it in and just allow us a little bit to have just those trees, really, 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 really tight focus. Turn off visualize depth. We'll see that, and it has done that, but just those are in focus. Okay. Now it's going to make that a little bit wider because it's going to be very hard to work with otherwise. So let's say we have a situation whereby there is stuff that's in focus that you don't want in focus. Well, how do you fix that? Well, you come down here to refine. And by clicking on refine, you get the focus and blur tools. So you can decide that you want particular areas to be like in focus that aren't, or you use blur to get rid of areas that you don't want. So let's say with blur, I want this area here to be out of focus. And there, I'm just going to bring that in so it's a little bit tighter. So that is now added to the mask that's been used. Okay. So if we move those areas will move as well with it. They're not painted on permanently, but they're part of the actual depth mask now. Okay, so let's say we've done that and we've done this at level. If I just paint somewhere else, for example, let's paint over here, that gets added to that part of the mask at 110. But if I click plus, I can come down here and I can create another area with a different level of blur. Okay, so that's a different level of blur again, and that gets painted into the mask as well. Let's go back to visualize depth. And see the way we got the black here along the purple? So we've now added to that depth. Basically, it's saying that's a different part of the depth. And again, because we've painted, we can go back at any stage and start adding to it. I didn't understand this before when I was doing the original video about features, but you can have as many areas of focus and blur, of different level of focus and blur as you want. Now, in terms of the actual brushing, we have the size, feather, and flow. Size is obviously the size, feather is the softness of the edge, and then flow is how strong it is at that point. So you can build up if you want. Generally, I'll just use it at 100 and do what I want with it. So that is just a quick look at this particular image. Now, you can use these to refine some awkward stuff as well. So you may have something whereby something that's immediately should be in the focal range hasn't been applied in the focal range, and you're able to focus it in. If you need to do lines, click and shift click works with this as well, so it's pretty good. What I haven't mentioned in the basic look so far is I haven't mentioned these two things here. This is subject, which will literally go and focus on what it thinks is the subject. So it's down here, it thinks the subject is down here. But you can also use this crosshair to come along here and select an object. So you can say here, okay, that is actually where I want the focus point to be. And you're telling it where it should be. So that's pretty straightforward in terms of if it makes a mistake on what it's guessing, that will fix it. When you've done a little bit of blur, you can also remove it, or focus for that matter. So if we were at our blur section, we're at that 110, and areas that are blurred, we can come in and we hold down the option key, and so you're able to delete wherever you've kind of blurred in that area. So just literally holding down the option will just change it. You can see there if we change the size of the brush. I realised afterwards something up on my keyboard because I was doing brush sizes with it and it wasn't working, and when I restarted the keyboard worked again. So the brush sizes are changeable normally, like with the square bracket keys. So if we put down some blur, so we put down some blur there, and then we hold down the option key, we can then erase that. So basically, just to let you know, you can do that as well. Auto mask does work the same as before, as in it will try and find edges and keep edges safe. So in your feathered area, if you keep just for the pluses where you want it to be, it will just basically work in that area and avoid edges. So here we have another image that's got a little bit of depth in it, and a subject that's obviously then going to be on front of it. All right. There may be issues with the hair here. Let's find out. I don't think it's as good with the hair as it could be. So let's click apply and see what happens. And it's doing the analysis, and it's come up with an idea of what it thinks is in focus. And let's go for a visualize depth here and see what it is. It has successfully pulled her out, which is really good. And it knows that everything's going by her. Although in actual fact, with that color, it should probably a little bit further forward than it says. But that's pretty good. I'm happy with that. Okay, so let me turn off visualize depth for a second here. But we're going to zoom in. All right, we're going to look around the hair. Now, I have used a mask in this. I bet you there's a sky mask. There's a sky mask there. And so we're getting these lines along it. So that is definitely an issue. We talk about early access. That is definitely an issue with it. Where if you have a mask selected, it really messes up. So you might be better off doing the mask later on. Okay. So what happens if I turn that mask off? You can see the issue goes away. So there's definitely an issue there as a heads up. In actual fact now, this is not terrible, but there is something funky going on here. And this is where I would come in with some blur. And what I would do is I'd look here, this is kind of a purple blur. So I kind of go along here and make that a bit smaller. So the same brush tools that you're familiar with already work. Your square bracket keys and your shift square bracket keys work. Or maybe they don't, because that's not going up. All right, so let's just paint in here. We want that to be blurred. Make sure auto mask is on. We're trying to avoid some hair. Just want that to be a little bit blurred because then it's not as obvious around the face. So this is the way you refine it. See, I mean, there's something funky going on here. Okay, that's not bad. All right. Now, so what we can do here as well is we can go for that kind of vintage look. Let's go for the vintage lens look and jump back out a bit. And what I want to do is I want to tighten that up a lot. Okay. And now just bring it in so that she's in focus. And again, what I'm going to do is just click on subject so it knows what it is. Okay, that's annoying. I'm just going to try something. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hold down the option key. No, that's just going to give me the visualize. Okay, but that's fine. That'll work too as well. Let's have it so that I want her to be in focus. There we go. And then let's make it even tighter. Just trying to make the ground tight, but keep it on her. What I was hoping for was a way to have a shortcut that I could keep the center and tighten it. Okay. Okay, there we go. So that's it. Right. So what I can do is now I can now increase the amount of blur. So that way it's a little bit more blurred behind her. Okay. And again, we're just going to zoom in again. And the reason for that is I just want to have a look at these edges to make sure there's no issues with those edges in particular. Okay, so that's how you do the refine. Again, if we paint areas, we can come in and when we have the plus, we can add to them as well as much as we need, which is very good. All right, so what does it not have? Okay, well, it doesn't have an option to add noise, which can match the noise that's already in the image. And the other thing is that we're limited to these 5 bokehs. So there is a feature request for them that you can either add your own somehow, or you can get third-party ones to be able to add third-party ones. So that way you could actually either have yourself or have someone else create ones that you can then add and give you a range of various different looks. And let's just jump to the ring for a second here. All right. So have a look here. See these highlight areas? See the way they literally look like the ring. So that is what that does. So it looks like the old mirror reflex lenses. Just I said that I would show that, and now we can just see it. So back to the vintage look. Which really suits this particular image as well because of the styling of the image. So folks, that is a look at lens blur directly on 2 different images just to show you some of the options that are there as well. Like I say, it's early access, it's not finished, so do jump in. There is a lot of, I think it's 500 strong easily, messages in that. If you on the click here to share feedback at that bottom there. There's over 500 suggestions on that. Some people are talking about how there needs to be more refined tools while they haven't actually discovered the refined tools yet or started to use them. But yeah, there are definitely things where we could work on the mask. And as you saw, there is definitely an issue there where there's masks already applied where it does really funny things around the edges of masks. Just talking about the masks, one thing I figured that you might be able to do is come in and actually, I have it turned on there. We had it off, if we turn it back on again, is that when I was looking at it and we were in Sky, you don't have an option to update the mask. But when you just click on the actual outside mask itself, you can get an update AI masks. Now, this is not always there. It's there now, and if we click update masks, what it does is it fixes the mask and then it works properly with the lens blur. So, yeah, I'm sure we'll get there, but it's still a wonderful tool to use right now, so do go play with it and do give feedback. Folks, if you're not subscribed, do think about that. Hit the bell as well if you want to get notified as well. And thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video.